Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason and I am on the Tidal Basin at Washington, D.C. And behind me, well way behind me, is the George Mason Memorial. Who was he? Yes, he was a forgotten founding father, and I'll tell you more about him. And there's a marker right next to me. Here we go. Alright, so here's the marker titled Forgotten Founder, and that is a portrait of him circa 1811. I'll try not to read most of this marker, but pretty much he wrote in the Virginia Declaration of Rights on June 1776, all men are born equally free and independent and have certain inherent natural rights, among which are the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. So in front of you is a statue of George Mason. It's actually behind that bush over there. I'll take you there. Who lived from 1725 to 1792. Mason holds a book by Cicero, a Roman politician and orator. Mason was inspired by Cicero and others when he wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights in 1776. A month later, Thomas Jefferson was inspired by Mason's words when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. The Virginia Declaration was the first document to protect individual rights, like freedom of religion and the press, in what would become the United States. And he would continue to champion individual rights, and he was a delegate of the 1787 Constitutional Convention. But he refused to sign the Constitution because it did not include such projections. As a result, Mason was marginalized as a founder, but his ideas lived on. So, while he championed individual rights, he paradoxically also enslaved about 300 people on his 5,500-acre plantation in Northern Virginia. The wealth created by Mason's enslaved workforce gave him the prominence to become an elected appointed official. Despite voicing his concerns about slavery, Mason never used his power to advocate for the abolition of slavery. Rather, he favored a ban on the importation of Africans. This position financially benefited him as an enslaver and potential seller of hundreds of people. In his will, Mason chose not to free any of his enslaved workplace upon his death. And these are the memorial facts. It was authorized by Congress in 1990, and it was dedicated on April 9th, 2002. Alright, so we're going to head on down that way. We're just right across from that pool. And again, that is him holding a book on Cicero. And there's a book by John Locke, who wrote about democracy. To the left of the memorial, there's a quote about him by Thomas Jefferson, and then George Mason, as well as another one by him. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason, right by the George Mason Memorial in Washington, D.C. Sign off.